Welcome to the Money Trail, where we investigate the hidden financial history that shapes our world. Today, we're delving into a secretive and complex topic, currency wars, the silent battles fought with money. Imagine a weapon so powerful it could cripple economies, yet so covert it's almost invisible. Welcome to the world of currency manipulation. This is a story of how countries use their currencies as weapons in a global battle for economic supremacy. It all began in 1971 when President Nixon shocked the world by ending the Bretton Woods Agreement, detaching the US dollar from gold. Almost immediately, other countries started devaluing their currencies to boost exports and gain an edge in trade wars. Since then, these secret battles have been waged behind closed doors, with trillions of dollars at stake. Here's how it works. By devaluing its currency, a country makes its goods cheaper abroad, increasing exports. However, this also makes imports more expensive, potentially triggering inflation. It's a risky game that can backfire if not managed carefully. One notorious example is Japan in the 1980s. To counteract a strong yen, the Bank of Japan implemented policies to lower interest rates and increase money supply, effectively devaluing the yen. While it initially boosted Japanese exports, it also fueled an asset bubble that eventually burst, leading to a decade-long recession known as the Lost Decade. In recent years, China has been accused of similar tactics. Between 2004 and 2013, China allegedly held down the value of its currency, the yuan, giving Chinese manufacturers an unfair advantage in global markets. This sparked accusations from countries like the US, leading to tensions that still reverberate today. Currency wars are real, complex, and high stakes. They impact everyone, yet few understand them. In this series, we'll uncover the truths behind these silent battles, exploring their causes, consequences, and potential solutions. In the late 1980s, Japan was accused of currency manipulation to gain a competitive edge in trade. The Plaza Accord of 1985, an agreement between France, West Germany, Japan, the United States, and the UK, aimed to depreciate the US dollar against the Japanese yen and German Deutsche Mark. However, Japan took this a step further. The Bank of Japan implemented policies that kept the value of the yen artificially low, making Japanese exports cheaper and more competitive on the global market. This infuriated other countries, especially the United States, which suffered a significant trade deficit with Japan. By 1987, the US-Japan trade surplus had reached a staggering $60 billion, fueling protectionist sentiments in America. Fast forward to the late 1990s and early 2000s, when China emerged as a significant player in global trade. Like Japan before it, China was accused of manipulating its currency, the renminbi, to boost exports. Beijing kept the renminbi pegged to the US dollar at an artificially low rate, making Chinese goods cheaper for American consumers and giving Chinese manufacturers an unfair advantage in global markets. In 2010, amid growing concerns about China's currency manipulation, the Obama administration accused Beijing of keeping its currency undervalued by as much as 40%. This sparked accusations from countries like the US, leading to tensions that still reverberate today. Currency wars are not a new phenomenon, and their impact can be devastating. They can lead to trade imbalances, job losses, and economic instability. While some argue that currency manipulation is a legitimate tool for boosting exports and promoting economic growth, others see it as an unfair practice that undermines free trade and jeopardizes global economic stability. As we delve deeper into this complex issue, we'll explore the motivations behind currency manipulation, its impact on global trade, and potential solutions to this high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship. Stay tuned for our next episode of The Money Trail. Welcome back to The Money Trail. In our last segment, we explored the controversial issue of currency wars, where countries secretly devalue their money to gain an edge in trade. Now, let's delve into the tools and tactics these nations use to manipulate their currencies. Central banks play a pivotal role in this process. They buy and sell vast sums of foreign currency, influencing exchange rates to make exports cheaper and imports more expensive. For instance, between 2008 and 2014, China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, spent trillions of dollars on US Treasury bonds, effectively keeping the value of the yuan low and boosting Chinese exports. Another tactic is quantitative easing, a form of monetary policy where a central bank creates new money to buy government bonds or other assets. This increases the money supply, reducing interest rates and weakening the currency. After the 2008 financial crisis, the US Federal Reserve implemented multiple rounds of quantitative easing, causing the dollar to depreciate against other major currencies. Central banks can also influence exchange rates through interest rate policy. Higher interest rates attract foreign capital, increasing demand for the domestic currency and boosting its value. Conversely, lower interest rates make a country's exports more competitive but risk triggering capital flight and depreciating the currency. A more subtle method of currency manipulation is through regulatory measures. For example, governments can impose restrictions on foreign investments or require domestic banks to hold larger reserves in local currency, reducing demand for foreign currencies. These policies can indirectly affect exchange rates without directly intervening in currency markets. In the next episode of The Money Trail, we'll examine the motivations behind currency wars and explore their impact on global trade. Until then, join us as we continue to uncover the hidden financial history shaping our world. In the early 1990s, Japan found itself in a precarious economic situation. Stagnant growth, deflation, and a rapidly appreciating yen threatened its prosperity. To counteract these forces, Japan embarked on an ambitious strategy to covertly devalue the yen, igniting what would become known as the coin wars of the 1990s. Japan's plan was multifaceted, involving both monetary and fiscal policies aimed at boosting exports and stimulating economic growth. The Bank of Japan, the country's central bank, engaged in a practice called quantitative easing, pumping massive amounts of yen into the economy to lower interest rates. By making borrowing cheaper, the BOJ hoped to spur investment and consumption, thereby increasing demand for Japanese goods and services abroad. However, the most audacious part of Japan's strategy was its attempt to manipulate exchange rates indirectly. The government encouraged financial institutions to buy foreign currencies with their excess yen, thereby reducing the supply of yen in circulation and artificially raising its value. By doing so covertly, Japan aimed to avoid international repercussions while still gaining a competitive advantage in global trade. But Japan's actions did not go unnoticed. As early as 1994 then, U.S. Treasury Secretary Lloyd Bentsen accused Japan of competitive devaluation and warned of potential retaliation. Despite these warnings, Japan continued its policies throughout the decade, amassing a sizable stockpile of foreign currencies, at one point reaching over 200 billion in reserves. The consequences of Japan's covert devaluation were far-reaching and complex. While it did succeed in boosting exports and stimulating economic growth, it also fueled tensions with trading partners like the United States. Moreover, by lowering interest rates to near zero, Japan created an environment conducive to asset bubbles, which eventually contributed to the country's lost decade of economic stagnation. Japan's experience in the 1990s serves as a cautionary tale for other countries contemplating similar strategies today. While currency devaluation can provide short-term benefits, it often comes at the expense of long-term economic health and international relations. As we continue to uncover the hidden financial history shaping our world, join us next time on The Money Trail, as we explore the motivations behind currency wars and their impact on global trade. Delving deeper into our exploration of currency wars, let's turn our attention to China's controversial practices since joining the World Trade Organization in 2001. In the 2 decades that followed, Beijing has been repeatedly accused of manipulating its currency, the yuan, to gain an unfair advantage in global trade. From 2004 to 2013, China deliberately undervalued its currency by as much as 40%, according to a U.S. Senate report. By artificially suppressing the value of the yuan, Chinese exports became cheaper and more competitive in international markets, while foreign goods entering China became pricier, a textbook example of currency manipulation. This practice reached its peak between 2008 and 2013 when China's trade surplus ballooned to over $3 trillion. During this period, the U.S. alone accounted for nearly $1 trillion of China's accumulated surplus, a point of contention that led to mounting pressure on Beijing from successive American administrations. In 2015, the United States labeled China a currency manipulator for the first time since 1994, only to reverse its position in early 2017 after Donald Trump took office. However, accusations of currency manipulation resurfaced later that same year when the US-China trade war erupted. Critics argue that China's controversial practices not only violate WTO rules, but also undermine global efforts to establish fair trading relationships. Moreover, these actions contribute to growing economic disparities between developed and developing nations, perpetuating poverty cycles in some of the world's most vulnerable regions. Despite repeated calls from international organizations and foreign governments for China to end its currency manipulation, Beijing has only partially complied. While it did allow the yuan to appreciate modestly against the dollar after 2014, critics claim that this move was more cosmetic than substantive. As we continue unraveling the complex web of currency wars and their impact on global trade, one thing remains clear. Understanding China's controversial currency practices since joining the WTO is crucial to making sense of today's financial landscape. In 2016, a mere 2 years after China's alleged cosmetic appreciation of the yuan, something dramatic happened. The Chinese government suddenly devalued its currency by nearly 4%. This sudden move sent shockwaves through global markets, causing stock prices to plummet and sparking fears of a full-blown currency war. But why would China do this? Well, it's all about trade. When a country devalues its currency, its exports become cheaper for foreign buyers, making them more attractive. Conversely, imports become more expensive, which can help protect domestic industries from foreign competition. So, in essence, by devaluing the yuan, China was giving its exports an unfair price advantage over those of other countries. However, such actions have far-reaching consequences. Devaluation can lead to inflation as the cost of goods and services starts to rise. In fact, between 2015 and 2016, consumer prices in China increased by 2%, while producer prices surged by over 7%. This meant that while Chinese businesses were enjoying higher profits due to increased exports, Ordinary people were paying the price through higher living costs. Moreover, currency wars can destabilize global markets. When one country devalues its currency, others may feel compelled to follow suit to remain competitive. This creates a vicious cycle of devaluation that can lead to trade tensions and even economic recessions. Just look at what happened during the 1930s Great Depression when countries engaged in competitive devaluations, exacerbating the downturn and turning it into a global catastrophe. To make matters worse, these currency manipulations often occur under the radar, making it difficult for regulators and watchdogs to keep track. Take, for example, the case of Singapore. In 2010, the US accused Singapore of undervaluing its dollar to gain an unfair trade advantage, a charge the city-state denied. However, subsequent investigations revealed that Singapore had indeed been intervening in foreign exchange markets to keep its currency weak, contributing to a significant trade surplus. Clearly then, currency wars pose serious threats to the stability of the global economy. As we've seen, they can lead to inflation, market instability, and even recession. Yet despite these dangers, countries continue to engage in this risky behavior, driven by the lure of short-term trade gains. The question is, how much longer can this go on before the whole system collapses? Only time will tell. In an effort to regulate currency manipulation, the G20, a leading forum for international cooperation on financial and economic issues, has taken action. In 2015, the group agreed to avoid competitive devaluation and resist all forms of protectionism, recognizing that these practices can have detrimental effects on global growth and stability. However, enforcement remains a challenge as countries continue to find ways around the rules. The International Monetary Fund, an organization with 29 member countries, also plays a role in addressing currency manipulation. The IMF's Articles of Agreement prohibit members from manipulating exchange rates for the purpose of gaining an unfair competitive advantage. In 2016, the fund introduced a new framework for surveillance of exchange rate policies aimed at detecting and deterring harmful currency practices. However, critics argue that these efforts are not enough. The IMF has limited powers to enforce its rules and often relies on self-reporting from member countries, which can be unreliable. Moreover, the G20's commitment to avoid competitive devaluation is non-binding, making it difficult to hold countries accountable for their actions. One notable exception is the United States, which has taken a more aggressive approach to combating currency manipulation. In 2015, Congress passed a bill giving the president the authority to impose tariffs on goods from countries that manipulate their currencies. This move was seen as a direct response to China's alleged currency manipulation practices, which have been blamed for contributing to America's trade deficit. But even with these efforts, the problem persists. Countries continue to find ways to gain an advantage in the global marketplace through currency manipulation, and the risks of a full-blown currency war remain high. The stakes are high, and the consequences of failure could be severe. As former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke once said, if countries start to compete in a currency war, it will be very destructive. In the end, it's up to all of us, policymakers, business leaders, and citizens alike, to demand transparency, accountability, and fairness in international trade. Only then can we hope to prevent another global economic crisis and build a more stable and prosperous future for all. In this complex world of international finance, where trillions of dollars crisscross borders every second, it's more important than ever to stay vigilant. The lessons of history teach us that currency wars can have devastating consequences as countries race to the bottom, devaluing their money in a futile attempt to gain an advantage in trade. Just look at Japan, which embarked on a massive monetary expansion program in the late 1980s known as quantitative easing. By flooding its economy with cheap yen, Japan hoped to boost exports and revive its flagging fortunes. But instead, it triggered a wave of speculative investing that created a massive asset bubble, followed by a decade-long recession. Or consider the European debt crisis of 2010, when Greece was revealed to have hidden the true extent of its budget deficits. As investors fled the country, the value of the euro plunged, threatening the very existence of the single currency. It took a massive bailout from other EU countries and the IMF to prevent a full-blown financial meltdown. These examples show that currency wars are not some abstract concept, but a real and present danger. And while they may be waged in the shadows, their effects can be all too visible in the form of rising unemployment, stagnant wages, and vanishing savings. So what can be done to prevent another global economic crisis? First and foremost, we need greater transparency and accountability in international trade. This means shining a light on opaque currency manipulation tactics, such as quantitative easing, capital controls, and export subsidies. It also means holding policymakers and business leaders accountable for their actions through tougher regulations, stronger enforcement, and stiffer penalties for wrongdoing. But ultimately, it's up to all of us, citizens, consumers, and voters, to demand change. By supporting politicians who champion fair trade, by choosing to buy products made in countries that play by the rules, and by speaking out against currency manipulation and other unfair practices, we can help build a more stable and prosperous future for all. For this is not just a battle of economies, but a struggle for the soul of globalization itself. Will it be a force for good, spreading wealth and opportunity to all corners of the globe? Or will it become a zero-sum game, where only the strongest and most ruthless survive? The answer lies with us. In the end, the true winners in any currency war are not those who devalue their money the most, but those who invest wisely, work hard, and stay true to their values. As the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Let us take that first step together toward a more just and equitable world.